Now, we've been talking about recruiting track and talking about recruiting, and that's been a lot of our focus, and we've seen that there's a lot of similarities between recruiting and sales. In fact, when you're recruiting, you are to some degree selling that individual on the company, but I want to be very careful in the way that we place that. And the reason that I say that is you don't want to just recruit somebody because they have a pulse, because they can breathe on a mirror. Remember that you're going to have to work with these individuals, and these individuals are going to be part of your team, and they're going to be a representation of you as well. So this is not just bringing somebody in, try to explode it, get as many people in as you can. This does take you working with your agents. Now, most everything we do is automated. So after a couple quick run-throughs, usually an individual is pretty much up to speed with the materials they have to use. But what you should really be focusing on is that first 6 lessons of sales track with your new recruits. And for those of you that have been around for a while, it's a good idea to revisit those first 6 steps of sales track as well. Reminding ourselves of our basics is never a bad thing, especially when you're in a sales environment like we are in, direct sales, entrepreneurial sales. This takes discipline and it takes follow-up. And I'm telling you right now, everything nowadays deals with follow-up. We're seeing less and less live meetings of people. We're seeing more and more people meeting on web conferences. We're seeing more and more people doing their shopping, their commerce, things of that nature over the internet, and things are evolving, and it's not going to go backwards. So it is something where, since contact is so spontaneous and so quick, you need to be prepared when you have contact. You need to have something to say, and you need to have a process in place. But above all of that, you need to have follow-up with everything that you do, with every name that you get, with every person that you meet. Follow up, follow up, follow up. And this is the key to individuals that you see later in their life that are moving into something new or trying something new. We have to remember that everyone that we meet is not going to be an exact fit for Worth Unlimited. But that doesn't mean that you just chop people off at the knees. Be particular in who you bring in. All right, so our recruiting process first is gain interest. Today we're going to talk about the litmus test in regards to recruiting. And gaining interest is your first 6 lessons of sales track. With whom do I start? Your 15-second commercial, your qualifying questions and tie-downs, personal and borrowed stories, the litmus test we're going to hear tonight, and then setting your appointment in stone. And as Joan and Darlene have repeated many times, this right here is your introduction. I know it looks like a lot of information, 6 steps just for an introduction, but we're breaking it down into detail of some points that you should hit in the process of that conversation. Now, do understand this as well. Before you start getting to any qualifying questions or you start getting to trying to tie somebody down, you probably should already have their attention with the 15-second commercial or a good personal and borrowed story. So the personal and borrowed story could come right when you first meet them. The personal and borrowed story could be right after you ask them a couple qualifying questions. So those 3, the 15-second commercial, qualifying questions and tie-downs, and the personal and borrowed story, kind of intermingle. Your 15-second commercial, you should have quite a few of those by now. Ways of explaining what you do that are enticing, that make the individual want to know more. And Joan put a challenge out 2 weeks ago, and then again last week, of coming up with a 15-second commercial, which would be with 7 words only. And we had a few people take us up on that challenge, but I would really challenge you to do that because it helps you condense maybe what you already have as a 15-second commercial. Maybe you can get it down to 10 words. Maybe you can get it down to 8. I know it can be done in 7. but maybe that's a goal that you're working towards. So remember, in everything that you're doing, look at those 6 areas of meeting somebody. And what I would like you to think to yourself is, in those 6 areas, my name list, my 15-second commercial, my qualifying questions, tie downs, personal borrowed story, my litmus test, my setting appointment stone, what area am I the weakest? What area am I struggling the most? And that's the area you want to get help on. And feel free to reach out to the person that recruited you. Feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to leaders. But put it into effect. If somebody gives you advice and says, you know, hey, why don't you take this sentence and mull it here and reword that, and you go, yeah, that sounds great. Don't call them back a week later and say, you know, it didn't work, but you only talked to 1 or 2 people. You have to get out and you have to talk to the masses. You have to talk to as many people as possible. That's how you're going to get your information out there. That's how you're going to start to see results. This is absolutely a numbers game when it comes down to the numbers of people that you speak to. Your step 2 in your recruiting process is send videos or live webinars, set follow-up appointments. This point about the follow-up appointment, anything you do with a client should be an appointment, and it should have a deadline of 24 to 48 hours. And it should be followed up with an email, follow-up, follow-up, follow-up. If you stay on top of your clients and move them through the process, I want you to think about yourself in any one given day. Now, it's not like it was even 15, even 20 years ago. I want you to think right now with your smartphone, with your TV, with your car, with your job, with texting, with Facebook, everything, how much are you distracted every single day? Have you missed an appointment? Have you forgotten an appointment on your own? Was that due to not having a reminder? Was that due to you got busy? I'm not trying to answer the question for you. I'm just trying to give you examples that in our day-to-day lives, we have become a lot more hurried and a lot more busy than we were even 15 to 20 years ago. And I you know, for me to be able to say that, that almost blows me away that I'm almost 60 years of age. But I remember 20 years ago very vividly, and getting people into meeting rooms, getting people to come and sit and watch a video, getting people to come and listen to something was pretty easy. Getting somebody to watch a DVD, my goodness, think about that. Handing out a DVD so people could watch it. Everything is online now. If there's not an online presence, if they can't watch it from a link, then it's not worth it to them, and that's where we have to break into. Your follow-up appointment is your step 3, and that should be to follow-up appointment should be to answer questions, but a follow-up appointment should always start off with one sentence. What did you like the best? Of everything you saw, of everything you heard, what did you like the best? That's where every follow-up appointment on a sale or a recruit should start. And when they start talking about what they like the best, get moving on that. You know, I really liked the fact that you could recruit a team. Great. Let's get some names. Let's get you recruiting. Let's get some people on your team. Let's get you moving. You know, I really liked the agent portal. I liked the video of the demonstration. Great. Did you know there's a script for the demonstration? You know that you can actually duplicate that demonstration for other people. Or you could go with, well, why was the demonstration so fascinating to you? Of all the information, of all the presentations, why did you enjoy the demonstration? Once you've recruited somebody, the sale really doesn't end, because what you really want, and this may sound harsh to a lot of you, but I want you to remember something. Other people know people you don't. And so when you meet brand new people, and that's why Joan says, and everybody says, everybody you meet should go into your database. And there should be notes about that person, where you met them, what they like, what they don't, as much information as you have about that individual to help you remember who they are when you speak to them. And you stay on top of those people and you build those conversations, and the time will come for you to ask some qualifying questions and tie downs and share a personal or borrowed story. Or maybe you met them at a BNI and it's just the next step. A BNI is a business like Mixer, a BNI meeting where you people come together and usually have 15 minutes or 5 minutes to say what they do, and people exchange cards. And If you're going to those are excellent. Be prepared to listen to somebody else's story if you're wanting to give your own story. Invest your time wisely in what you're doing to promote your business and to move yourself forward and propel yourself forward. Do a three-way call if needed to close them on that appointment. They are going to have questions for you. Be prepared to answer the questions, or if you know the day that you're going to be having the meeting and you know the time, call one of your leaders. Call somebody you know and say, hey, I'm going to have this person calling at this time. Will you be available for a three-way call? Or they're going to come over for a meeting at this time. Will you be available for a three-way? I may have some questions that I can't answer. Do you feel confident enough that I could give you a call possibly during the three-way if he has a question I can't answer or she has a question? Use what you have at your disposal. Don't reinvent the wheel. The three-way call now, even like I talked about 20 years ago, if they don't have a link and all that, something about that three-way call, it still works. That three-way call is one of the most powerful things that you have at your disposal. Close them, get them recruited, and get them moving in their training and get them targeting other people, bringing them in. And the 250 is a great way to target, but you can target finance or you can target a full sale. But as many people have said in the past, whether you're recruiting or whether you're selling the product, lead with the product itself. And the reason that I say that is you want their buy-in, you need their buy-in for that product to move forward if they're going to do anything with the business at all. If they just think it's a business and they don't really get the product, understand the product, aren't sold out to the product, they probably are not going to recruit anyone. They're probably not going to buy the product. So even in your recruiting efforts, expose them to the product in the back office. And many times when people get super turned on about this business, it's about the product. Another thing is make sure in your recruiting efforts in that first contact that you are sending something about the compensation. And we have that in writing. And I think that is probably the best document for you to send is a compensation from your agent portal to an individual that you're trying to recruit. Then if they have questions regarding that, that could be something that is answered in your follow-up appointment is questions about comp. If you don't know the answers, there's a perfect time to have somebody that does or to be able to get in touch with client support and get those answers if you need those or get the answers in advance. All right. Very last thing is begin your training and support, your 5 steps to success. That's listed in your agent portal. I believe that's also up on YouTube as well. Your takeaways from last week should be facts tell, stories sell. People buy on emotion but buy on logic. 90% of decisions are based on emotion. Stories tap into those emotions and help elicit response and action. Use your own story to initially gain interest. Start the conversation. Use a relevant story that aligns with how they answered the questions. Listen to other agent stories. Listen to client stories. Keep them in the back of your mind and introduce those. Don't just focus on the analysis. Success with business, customer service. How are they using the program in their lifestyle? Which aspects, tools do they like, use the most? How did the program impact their life? And this is conversation, therefore you need to be flexible. So when you're talking about your personal and borrowed stories, you can take these stories from all different avenues, and I want you to really peruse the screen. I'm going to leave that screen up for a little while. That personal and borrowed story, if told right, and if it is in line with what that individual that you're speaking to finds important, there is not much that speaks louder to somebody you're trying to recruit or somebody you're trying to sell than a good personal borrowed story, something about, in this context with the recruiting, something about the business or a success with a client through the business. Your personal and borrowed stories can be all over the map. You know, I needed X amount of dollars over so many months, and I was told about this program, and I started selling the program, and I was able to supplement my income through doing this part-time. There's a lot of those stories out there. There's people that have been in this so long that they get a deal here and there. They're getting overrides, and they're not even aware that a deal got done because it's far enough away from them that all they see is the commission check arrive. So I want you to understand that that personal and that borrowed story is very, very important. And I don't know anyone that has a better barrage of personal and borrowed stories than Dr. Joan Hackenstad. So I'm going to call on her real quick and see if she can just throw one out there for us real quick before we move into the litmus test as our lesson. So Dr. Joan, how are you doing this evening?
I am well. How are you?
I am doing very well. It's always a pleasure to have you on the call. Just you see what's on the screen, and we're talking about the personal and borrowed story. And I know you have yours down pat, your base one. Can you just rattle that off for everybody one more time?
Absolutely. I usually start with just kind of a brief introduction of what Worth is or the Worth account is. I start with the Worth account program is a web-based financial GPS. It looks at money coming in and money going out, and it mathematically finds the fastest way for people to pay off their loans. For example, my husband Eric and I, we're set to have our 29-year mortgage paid off in only 9.1 years. We're saving over $327,000 in interest and almost 20 years of payments. We did this without refinancing. Our monthly payments remained the same, and there was no change to our monthly budget. Would you like to see if you qualify?
And see, it really, and at that point, Joan, you've had some conversations with this person leading up to something that says that you want to see if you qualify. I know a lot of times you might tell that story, and then there's more conversation that persists after that, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And quite frankly, when we talk about sales track and we have those 6 lessons of sales track, they're not necessarily in that order. Sometimes I do start with that. I might lead somebody through introduction of Worth Unlimited, starting with, hey, do you own any real estate around here? How many years do you have left? Don't you hate all that interest you're going to give away to that financial institution? Have you heard about the Worth Account program? And then I go and I dive in that. And sometimes my story comes up a little bit later in the conversation. So it's an organic conversation. It's not something you can script out. You just need to be prepared. But everybody I talk to when I'm first introducing that has never been introduced to Worth Unlimited, everybody hears my story. Now, I always ask a ton of questions. In fact, 75% of sales, the effort in sales is information gathering. So I ask a ton of questions. It's not just the analysis information gathering, it's asking them a lot of questions. And those questions are going to tell you what stories to tell. They have to be relevant to that person. So everybody has a story, and you should tell your story. And you should also tell borrowed stories that are going to be relatable, where that person can really envision themselves in that story. That's what's going to cause them to take and want to take action to move forward as an agent, to move forward as a client, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I want to hover on this for just a little bit, because I don't want anybody to get the misimpression. Those 6 pieces are important in that tertiary conversation, but do know it is a sales track and a recruiting track. So, you want a conversation to mold in a certain way. And what I mean by that is you can guide a conversation by the questions that you're asking. And the most simple that I know of that is if you ask most people what they do for a living, somewhere in that conversation they're going to ask you what you do for a living. If you share something of triumph or something of, whatever with regards to a personal or borrowed story, most people will share something back with you as well. So do understand that sales track is intended to keep you on a track to run on, to make sure you don't miss certain pieces and to guide the process forward, but also be relevant and be tactful. Don't just, blurt out you're having a conversation about, a vacation they took, and all of a sudden you say, well, do you have any debt you're trying to pay? You you may want to avoid, really, going after people in that context. So be tactful about your conversation. Allow your conversation to grow organically. So for sales track, we're actually on recruiting part 5. Boy, getting more and more typos here and there. Recruiting sales track part 5, and this is actually our litmus test. Now the litmus test is very simple. And it's just asking the client on a scale. You're judging their desire, you're judging their interest level. So Mr., Ms., Miss, let's say we're using a scale of 1 to 5. 1 represents something that has no importance to you whatsoever, and 5 represents something that is absolutely imperative, something you absolutely need or want. You don't have to use those exact words. You could say, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 means nothing, 5 means everything. Where are you on that scale of 1 to 5 with your desire to earn more money, to join a small business, to whatever it is that answer to that question is? So on that scale of 1 to 5, where is your desire to earn more money or build your own business between 1 and 5? And then the thing that I want you to really think about, and I want you to be very clear on, is when you ask this question, then you be quiet. Let them answer the question. Now, it could be that exact same thing on that scale of 1 to 5. Where would your desire be to, have an additional product that you can sell along with what you're currently doing, to have an ancillary product, to buy the product for yourself, your desire to get out of debt, stop spending all that extra money, to build a business, to recruit a team, to become part of an established team. That question can be asked a couple different times in the course of, let's say, your presentation or the course of your appointments. On a scale of 1 to 5, how important is it for you to stop sending all of that additional money to the bank? On a scale of 1 to 5, how important is getting out of debt to you? Is it at the top? Let's say you have another way you can ask this question as well is, what are your top 5 things that you want to take care of? What hold the top 5 positions for your interest and concern? Now, hopefully you've moved them through the process. You've come down to a place that they have interest in becoming an agent or purchasing the product or doing both. And that's where this question really comes in, is on that scale of 1 to 5, 1 representing something that has no importance to you whatsoever, and 5 represents something that is absolutely imperative, something you absolutely need to want. On that scale of 1 to 5, where would your desire be to blank? Now, in this, to buy a new car, go on vacation, pay off your student loans, have the down payment money you need for a home, build a new business, supplement your existing business, find another career, try a new opportunity, work hard to get what you want, be a part of a team, make a difference. Maybe it's any one of those. Maybe it's a combination of those. But through your questioning, through your qualifiers, your tie downs, your personal borrower story, and like Joan said, 75% of your sales is information gathering. Through your information gathering, what point would be the fill in the blank for your prospect, for maybe the current person you've been speaking to, or maybe the current person that you've been working with, or maybe it's an individual that you just approached about the product and you have something upcoming. Dr. Jones talks a lot about, on her individual trainings with her team, about value proposition, about, and really basically what a value proposition is what is important to them. And then building a presentation, a conversation, materials around what is important to them, what is going to be their hot buttons, what is going to make them feel comfortable about what you're offering in the programs and things of that nature. So look there on the screen. These could all be answers to that first question. Allow for silence, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable that may be. Allow them to process the information. Wait until a prospect answers your question before moving on. Do not coach the prospect. Do not coax the prospect. Either way, be observant, be engaged. This is where you're really coming down to the wire. Let them respond first. They may respond with something like, what does 5 represent again? something to throw you off track, and answer their question, but re-ask your first question. So if they say, well, what does 5 represent? Say 5 represents something that is absolutely imperative. 1 was something that had no importance whatsoever. So I'll ask you again, on a scale of 1 to 5, where is your desire to, and insert the blank. Re-ask your question, but be silent until they answer. People need a different amount of time to process. Everybody's a little bit different. That is a pretty strong question that you're asking them, so give them the opportunity to process that information. So in the litmus test, there's 2 questions. And so I do want you to understand there is a second part to this as well. If they respond with a 1 or 2, they're not ready. If they say, I'm a 1 or 2 about debt, but somewhere along the line, you might find that intersection. It may not be about debt. It may be about building a business. It may be about recruiting people. It may be about becoming part of a team. So you may have to ask this a couple times to identify, if you can't do it in just the standard conversation you're having with them, what is truly important to them. So, you've talked to me that you'd like to build a business, you'd like to get out of debt, you'd like to build a team. What of those are the most important to you on a scale of 1 to 5, if you were going to categorize those? So get very particular with asking a lot of questions and drilling deep so you have the information you need. I do promise you this. If you take your time listening to what your client says and you direct that conversation to a conversation that matters, a conversation that has meaning, that is moving in a direction, the client will tell you exactly what you need to hear to close them. They'll give you the information you need. If earning more money or building your own business, independence, becoming your own boss, etc., ever becomes more of a priority for you, I'd like the opportunity to talk to you about that. So always leave that door open to revisit them later. If they respond with something like a 3 or a 5, you're going to ask the second part of the litmus question. But I want to hover here for just a second. Leave the door open for later visits. People's situations always change. Never burn the bridge. Always keep somebody in your database. I'm of the firm belief that you stop calling them if and when they ask you to stop calling them. People that are in your database shouldn't always just be the person you call every 3 months and talk about business. If you truly know how to work a database, it's calling somebody and saying, hey, I was just wondering how you're doing. We haven't spoken in a while. I remember meeting you at the Radisson. We had a great conversation. I remember meeting you at the Hilton. I remember meeting you at the Boys Club. I remember meeting you at the school, at Starbucks, you came through my grocery line, whatever it was. And, we haven't spoken in a while. I'm just wondering how you're doing. How are things? And open up that conversation again with that person. Keep the conversations open. Keep people to, and you'd be surprised how many people I've just kept over conversations and they've said to me somewhere down the road, are you still doing that debt thing? I really would like to know that. How many of you have heard that one? That a little bit of time has passed by and you get that phone call. I got a hand wave from Joan Hackenstad. How many people there have gotten the, hey, are you still doing that debt thing? Hey, are you still blah, blah, blah? Yeah, I just got another person came in on that. Another person just came in. I just got, Nick just came in on that. All right, so all of us have experienced this thing. It is about getting out there and talking to people. Larry just came in and said that that's happened to him. The reality is, if it becomes part of our conversational language, if it becomes second nature, Ralph just came in and said, I got one person 10 years after talking. Whoa. Now, if that's not a long sale in the making, that's Ralph W. Ralph, that's awesome. And I remember you, Ralph, very well. It's more about just talking about the product, just being real, just getting out there. And people go through jobs. People need to supplement income. People change careers. This particular product and our business has so many lateral markets that it is something that you should always be going back to people, maintaining those relationships, and talking about those conversations that matter that are going to move it forward. Okay, so the second question is really simple on the litmus test. It's great. So you say you're a 4 or 5 on a scale. I want to ask you another question. Are you serious or are you just curious about earning more money, building your own business? Whatever the end to that question was. A lot of people are going to tell you, I'm just curious, but don't let that be, the kill. Either way they answer this, if they say I'm curious or they say I'm serious. If they say I'm serious, you say, great, can we start tomorrow? Can we start tonight? You don't give it next week. You don't give it 3 days. You don't give it 4 days. You go, if you're dead serious, I need help now. If that was the entryway that you use, my business is exploding and I need new agents. Well, I'm really serious. I like what you've shown me. I want to get going. Great. Can we set an appointment for this afternoon, for tomorrow evening, for tomorrow morning, for tonight? Always seize the opportunity when the opportunity presents itself. If they say they're curious, say, great, I'd love to set up an appointment for tonight or tomorrow or the next day where we can get together and we can go through some things and maybe I can solve some of your curiosity about how this could fit into what it is that you're looking to try to do. So keep it very organic, keep it very open and broad until they narrow it down. That's another point that I want to make to you. You're not really the one that's going to narrow down what's important to them. They're going to narrow it down, but you're going to help them by the questions you ask. So if that's not that important, what is more important than that? What is it that you're looking to do? And there may be a lateral market there. Maybe your approach wasn't correct. The key is going to come in asking questions and turning the tables back and forth to get as much information from that client as possible. If they respond with a negative response, I'm just curious, you could move on with something like maybe we can visit that some other time when it's right for you, or we can revisit your situation when earning more money. It's more of a priority for you. Also, as I said, with the curiosity response, it could be great. Can we have a meeting so maybe I can answer some of your curiosities? Either way they ask that question, you have an open door. Now, if they say, I'm just curious, can't you just tell me a little bit more about it now? You may want to press more for the appointment or something in this regard. Maybe we should revisit with this when the timing's better for you or when it's more of a priority or when this seems to be more in line with what you're looking for. If they're serious, move directly to the next step. That's setting your appointment in stone. So, in summary for tonight, sales track is a process best used for recruiting as well as sales. Don't reinvent the wheel. Follow a duplicatable, replicatable system that can be easily learned and executed by others. Gain interests in videos, set follow-up appointments. Follow-up appointment answer questions. Begin training and support. Allow for silence. Don't coach or coax. Do something uncomfortable every single day. And don't be a secret business owner. Get out there and start the conversation that matters. I'm going to run over to Dr. Joan real quick and just see if she has any little caps she'd like to put to the training tonight on the litmus test. So, Dr. Joan, it's your floor.
Thank you, sir. I just want to say, first of all, you do such a great job. Thank you so very much, Mac. You are amazing. Great job. I think you did a great job. Absolutely. I think you did a great job really talking about the litmus test. There's not really much that I can add to it. Really, the main thing is 75% of your sales effort is really in the info gathering. Again, it's not the analysis gathering, although that's a part of the 75%. It's really asking a lot of questions, really getting to know them. The way they answer the questions is how you're going to form that litmus test. So on that scale of 1 to 5, where's your desire to insert blanks? What did they say was important to them? That's really all that I can emphasize tonight is what did they say was important to them. I'm an ambassador for one of our local chambers in Michigan, and it's interesting to me because the other ambassadors always say there's so much value in the chamber, there's so much value in the chamber, and they rattle off all these things that they think is important to them. And it's amazing to me because what they think is important to them is not necessarily what other people think is important to them. And so I always listen to them and I think, well, gosh, that's great. But clearly the person that you were talking to did not value the same things. Why aren't you asking them what's important to them? and then talking about that. And so I say all that to say that's what we need to do. We need to really identify not what's important to us as an individual, but what's important to that person that's sitting in front of us. Keep your agenda off the table. Find out, really dig deep, ask probing questions, really find out what's important to them, and then insert what they said is important to them as your story. Insert what they said was important to them as the litmus test. The only other thing I would say is if they do respond not very favorably on that scale of 1 to 5, maybe they say a 1. Sometimes it's really helpful to just do a takeaway. It's a very powerful sales approach. You have to be kind of careful because if you're not good at it, you can really kind of mess up the whole thing. But if you're seasoned within sales, doing a takeaway can be a very valuable thing because sometimes people don't want to feel sold. And sometimes they're really engaged in that conversation, but they start kind of feeling like they're getting sold, and so they're going to respond negatively. And when you do that takeaway, they're like, whoa, 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 no, I actually really am interested. I guess I'm closer to a 4 or 5. So they can kind of talk themselves back into the sale as well. So a takeaway can be very powerful, but definitely, if their bottom line is they aren't interested now, definitely keep that door open so that you can stay in contact with them later. So great job, Mac. As always, you do a phenomenal job. So thank you so very much for all that you do for us out here in the field.
Well, thank you as well, and I think you do a great job as well, too. That's why I love having you on the call. So thank you for the time that you spend with us every Monday.
My pleasure.
All right. So Joan talked about the takeaway, and I should have really hammered that a little bit more. But if you notice on the slide that's on the screen right now, that was the piece where I was saying if they respond with a negative, I'm just curious, move on with something like maybe we can revisit this some other time when the timing is right for you, or we can revisit your situation when earning money is more of a priority for you, or maybe I can understand the timing is not right for you, so maybe this isn't right for you right now. Insert whatever it is they said was important to them. Maybe it isn't that important, for you to be earning that additional money to supplement your income right now. We can revisit this at another time. That's what Joan is talking about, the takeaway, but do be careful in those takeaway sequences because they can backfire on you where the person just says, yep, okay, I'm down with that. Let's just revisit it some other time. So how are those bears doing? So excellent. Joan, thank you very much, everybody that's been on the call. Welcome to the Worth team and Change Through Education and making a difference you can be proud of. Everybody on this call, I know you feel this. We're buying America back one family at a time. We have the capacity to watch the bank. You have the capacity to take control of your own future. But none of this happens unless you take action today. And just like we talked, maybe what I have on that screen right there is not important to you. Maybe it's something else that's more important to you that drives you to this company or drives you to the product. But do know that we have your success in mind. We have your success in our best interest as well. And we thank you all so much for everything you've done. I want to leave you with Ron Bruder. People accept the lives they live and do the things they do not because they have to. Not because they have to, but because no one ever showed them an alternative. What a great quote. People accept the lives they live and do the things they do not because they have to, but because no one ever showed them an alternative. So I want you all to think about that. You have an alternative, and the future is in your hands. It's what you want to do with it. If you ever need to get in touch with me or get in touch with Worth Support, there's the numbers and the emails. I want to thank everybody for joining us for the Agent Update and Sales Track Training for February 25th, 2019. This is Max Saunders, your National Sales and Training Director, saying let's get out there and do it big. Let's get out there and do it right. But at the very least, let's get out there and do something right now. This is Max Saunders saying bye-bye for now.